Hello, I'm Dr. Warren, and today we're going to be going through an update to some of our Lyme testing guidelines. It's 2023, and there's been some upgrades and some changes that we need to talk about in regards to Lyme testing and how to get the best information in order to get better. I'm pretty passionate about accurate Lyme testing because this is part of my family's health journey and story. My wife got sick as we had our first child. I ran low quality, poor testing, and that led me down the wrong road with my wife for several years. I actually think running bad testing is sometimes worse than running no testing, because you think you've looked at it, but you really haven't until you dig a little bit deeper. And those early years of marriage were the roughest years of our marriage because my wife's health was extremely poor. We had our parents help us. And so it was just really, really stressful. And so I know that the strain that this can put on your relationships and on your parenting and on your career and on your family. And, it's tough when you can't find the source. So if you have unexplained symptoms and you live in a tick endemic area like Minnesota and Wisconsin, anywhere there's deer, really, there's probably deer ticks. So if you're having trouble pinning down where your symptoms are really coming from or what's the source of your symptoms, thorough, excellent tick-borne testing, which is Lyme and the co-infections, is really a must if there's not another obvious source of your symptoms. One of the questions I get is, why is the Lyme testing so bad? And we really discovered Lyme in the mid-'80s. And so your oldest generation of doctors who've been fighting this since the late 80s and mid-90s are now all retiring. And they founded some of these different Lyme foundations. Dr. Bergdorferi, which Lyme is Borrelia, and then the species called Bergdorferi, at least one of the species, that got named, I think, in 1984. The problem we have is then the testing became standard in the mid to early 90s, and there really has not been adequate updates in the last 30 years. That's the short story. Is we've upgraded a bunch of things. We've discovered all kinds of holes that we didn't know about in the early 90s, but because the standard has been kept for almost 30 years now, or over 30 years, there's just all kinds of holes people fall through. And we really think this test, at best, catches about 2/3 of people, and it's possible it can miss 50% of people. And that's just a really high miss rate. And so running testing that has that high of missing potential, really think actually misleads many people rather than giving them accurate information. For those of you who don't know, the CDC standard is we run an ELISA screener test. And if that's positive, they follow up with a Western blot. And on that blot, you have 5 bands that need to be positive in order for it to be called CDC positive. Now, this criteria is extremely strict, was meant for research purposes to give you a very homogeneous group of people that absolutely had Lyme. But on the flip side, the cost of doing it this way is you're gonna miss 1/3, maybe a half of people who have Lyme. You're gonna say, no, you're not positive enough, or you don't meet the criteria. All right, so what you'll hear then is a lot of these doctors who started in the 90s, so some of my colleagues who are now retiring, they're in their 60s and they've been fighting Lyme for their whole career. So they've been preaching since the 90s that the testing's not very good because they knew it wasn't very good. And so they just went based on symptoms. So you have some doctors who are going, well, we need this Lyme criteria. And then you have a lot of Lyme doctors going, well, the testing isn't very good. So you got this narrative out there that Lyme testing is terrible, so it's not worth the money. And that's true if you're talking about the standard testing that's really run, that was approved in the mid-90s. It's not true when you start talking about all the different upgrades and options that are available now. Several different companies that run very thorough, very accurate tick-borne testing, both Lyme and its co-infection. So that idea that Lyme testing is inaccurate is really an older idea from the 90s when it was just the best we had. Now we have better. The first kind of improvement, this is just the most basic one that I remember dealing with, was certain bands, when you're matching bands, are more specific than others. So to not get too nerdy, When you're looking at a blot test, I don't like the screener test, you're looking at a blot test, they're gonna match different bands. And these are different ways to identify you. So if you think about me, if we get my fingerprints, that's a very specific way to identify me. And then if we say something like, well, I'm a human. Well, it is true, and it does rule out other species on the planet, but it's not very specific. And so similar, some of the bands on the Western blot will tell you, well, this is a bacteria that has a flagella. Well, half the bacteria have flagellas. Lyme is included in that family, but it's not super specific to Lyme. Now, certain bands, such as a C6 peptide or band 23, 31, 34, 39, and 93, are very specific to Lyme and don't cross-react with other things. And this means that when you have one of those bands positive, it has a little bit more weight than some of the general bands. So if you have specific bands positive, this can be helpful about Lyme disease. The biggest thing that I think has been updated since we last talked testing has been multiple species of Lyme. And so we mentioned earlier that Lyme is Borrelia burgdorferi. That is the first species of Lyme ever discovered. But in the last 30 to 40 years, we've discovered multiple species of Lyme. So in the 90s, we discovered Borrelia garini and Borrelia afzelii. And in 2013, I'll use a local example, the Mayo Clinic discovered a species of Lyme called Borrelia mayoni. They named it after themselves. There's another one called Borrelia lone starri, discovered in the Lone Star tick, and then Borrelia californiensis. Anybody want to guess which state we discovered this in? And so what's happened over the last about 30 years is we've discovered multiple species of Borrelia, which we'll just all call Lyme. And each species is a little bit different, but you'll have very similar symptoms. And so one of the big flaws that people are falling through, in fact, about a third of the people who I see in my office who have Lyme do not have Borrelia burgdorferi, which is the classic one we discovered in the 80s. They have Borrelia something else. And that's a huge hole. In fact, I think the single biggest hole right now that people are falling through. So the single biggest upgrade you can do to a Lyme test is run multiple species of Lyme. I think on our panel, we run about 16 species of Borrelia. I think 16 to 18 different species of Borrelia that we're constantly running. And as I said, about a third of the people that I run across, the reason their Lyme test was negative with their doctor is because they actually just have a different species. Now, one question you may see is that, are these different versions of Lyme regional? And my short answer to that is no. We used to think they were regional, and in the last 6-7 years, we have multiple lab companies running these multi-species panels. And then what we're finding is really there's so much travel, and there's so much movement that these species are everywhere. Another improvement or another change we need to make in the way we think about Lyme testing is some doctors will tell you there's immunoglobulin M, which is active, and G, which is a past infection. I cannot stress how wrong this is and how much it leads people astray. Without getting too nerdy on all the science, when you first get sick, your body makes IgMs, which are a pentagon shape, and it takes about a week for your body to make this. So you'll make it in this initial time when you first get sick. And it takes about a month, 3 to 4 weeks, but about a month for your immune system to make immunoglobulin G. And these are your long-term antibodies. And so really the only thing that an IgG tells you is that you've had it more than a month. And when we're talking about Lyme, there's this initial phase of acute infection, and after about 2 to 3 months, it goes chronic. Almost everyone that I see is in a chronic state, and we would expect in general an IgG to be positive because it's older than a month. If you've had this for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 10 years, what happens to many people is they're IgG positive or they have IgG reactions, and doctors falsely say, oh, that's a past infection, when really they're assuming it's a past infection. All it tells you is it's older than a month. We know it's older than a month. So we'll have other articles that we talk about how Lyme changes from its normal active phase into a chronic phase, what's called stationary or biofilm. And if doctors don't know that Lyme changes form, they're going to be misled into thinking that it's gone when it's really there causing persistent symptoms. Just know IgGs don't mean it's a past infection. What they really mean is it's older than a month. And that's all they really tell you. Another improvement that has to be made is I get patients who come in with only Lyme tests and they don't have any co-infections. Now, if you are a chronic case, and by chronic we mean you've been sick more than about 2 to 3 months, 93% of patients have co-infections. That's a number from Dr. Daniel Cameron, the former president of the ILADS Association. And what this means is the vast majority of the time what's happening is you're getting multiple infections in the tick bite, and it's the combination of the Lyme plus some of these co-infections that makes it too difficult for your body to overcome and get better. This is extremely important to know because each co-infection is a little bit different, and they kind of work together with Lyme and protect Lyme so that it's almost impossible for your body to get at the Lyme without getting at the co-infection. The most common co-infections that we find in Minnesota are Babesia, Bartonella, Anaplasma, and Powassan. Now, it's very important to know which ones you're fighting because it will change your protocol. So Bartonella, just like Lyme, is a bacteria, but Lyme hates oxygen and Bartonella loves oxygen. And so they live in different places. The Bartonella loves your cardiovascular system. And because they're such different bacteria, you do need different strategies to help support your body to fight these things. Babesia is a parasite. And so fighting a bacteria versus fighting a parasite is very different for your body. Powassan's a virus. So helping your body fight a virus is very different. If, these combinations of what are you fighting and how do you help your body fight it better, the co-infections that you have along with the Lyme dramatically change your protocol and dramatically change the way your body needs support in order to best recover. So you have to run Lyme multiple species and you need to run co-infection testing. And guess what? There's multiple species of these co-infections. So I get patients who go and this the standard panel. So we run Lyme and then we run a few co-infections at your doctor. Well, we still run multiple species of Babesia. I think I have 8 tests for Babesia on my current panel, 10 for Bartonella. That includes 4 different species, multiple tests for Anaplasma. And so it's not just Lyme that we've discovered. There's multiple proteins you can match and multiple species you can match. It's some of these co-infections also. And so just by being more thorough and by testing things we've discovered since the 90s, we just catch so many people that are falling through the cracks. Another question that I get is, should we just go based on symptoms? And this harkens back to those early 90s where doctors weren't sure about the test, and so they were really going based off symptom presentations and history. So let's say you have Lyme and Babesia. Overwhelmingly, what happens to patients is if you're going to go about trying to improve it, you're going to fix one before you fix the other. And so maybe you fix Lyme first, but your body's still fighting Babesia, or your body's fighting Babesia, but it wins against Babesia, but still has Lyme. And you need to know as you're going which one your body is kind of won against and which one it's still fighting in order to alter your protocol as you go and keep it on target to be effective. There's another reason why you need accurate testing is because these symptoms can get so muddied. Lyme and Bartonella can both cause crazy neurological symptoms. Babesia plus Lyme can cause fatigue, can cause breathing issues, but Bartonella can too. And Powassan virus can make you tired, and they can all intermix. And so going solely based on symptoms can be very difficult to differentiate which symptoms come from which bugs. And that's where objective testing helps keep you on track and can help you decipher the best route and what's working and what's not working so you know how to make adjustments to be successful. Now, the thing I didn't mention, which we'll just mention briefly, is there is also PCR testing, which if you can catch the DNA of the bug, amplify it, and identify it directly that way, is also useful. So our test does all these multiple species, multiple bugs, and you're going to be checking for IgGs, IgMs, and PCR testing at the same time. By running this kind of thorough panel, you're just going to find so many people who are slipping through the cracks of the older, less thorough testing, and we come and we run better testing in the office, and we just find it. And once you find it, once you know what you're fighting, you can come up with a strategy to get better. If you don't know what you're fighting, it's hard to fight it, it's hard to improve. A question I get, are there other tests we run besides just the tick-borne panel? I would say the number one panel that I run on almost everyone is a vitamin, mineral, and antioxidant panel. And I did this purely because I was failing for dumb reasons with people in the office. So if your immune system is trying to fight one of these bugs, overwhelmingly your immune system is running out of raw materials that it needs to fight. And so sometimes you have to give people vitamin A or vitamin C or zinc or other nutrients that are really essential for your immune system to help fight this off. You need your immune system involved to fight this thing off, because whether it's antibiotics or herbal things, whatever you're using to kill the bug can't kill 100% of it. It kills a majority of it. Let's call it 90%. You need your immune system to finish that last 10% and finish it off. So it's very important to make sure your immune system is strong when trying to fight these things off. The other reason that this panel is very important is, let's say you have neuropathy and you're tired and you've been fighting Lyme and some of these co-infections and you get rid of them. But as a result of all this, you ran out of something like B12. So you're low in B12. Well, you can get rid of the bugs and you won't feel better, because if you don't have B12, you don't have energy, and it's hard to heal any kind of neuropathy with low B12. And so I got too many people who we were starting to be negative on, tick testing, but they didn't feel better. And then we'd look and go, oh, you're low in, B12, for example, and we give them B12 and they'd feel better, but it takes longer. And it was frustrating for many people. So we started doing this nutrient panel because, one, it helps us be more successful with the immune system trying to fight the bugs. And two, it helps you repair the damage that the ticks have done to your body. And that's when you actually feel the improvement, right? And so doctors, as a doctor, I want you to feel better. I like when you pass tests and when markers get better, but we run this panel both to be more successful fighting the bug and to be more successful healing, because that's the moment when you actually function better and life improves, right? You can go do things because you're functioning better. What does good Lyme testing cost? This is a great question. Unfortunately, I have to give a little bit of a range here, because when someone comes into my office, we treat everyone individually, and I'll have you fill out your history, and we'll go through your symptoms. And I'm going to customize the testing panel based on what we think you need when you come into the clinic. I can tell you from just experience, most people when they come in the office will spend anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 in testing to try to get to the root of where their problems are coming from. And oftentimes a huge part of that is the most thorough tick-borne panel that we can put together. But I'll also, I'll do the nutrient panel, or if you have other things that haven't been done, I will be filling in, and we talk through what other things those are. But we really want to find the root of your problem, because if we can find the root of the problem, then we can come up with plans to solve it. And if we miss the root of what's happening to you, we're going to be unsuccessful in helping you get better. What happens if I run all this tests and I can't find the problem, or I still look normal? This is a frequent question I get, but this does not happen very often. Most often what happens is we run thorough testing and we find the problem. Now, in a few times a year, this actually just happened last week, I had someone come back a little bit borderline, even on really good testing. That's the first time it's happened all year, and this is, I think I'm recording this around July. So it does not happen very frequent when you're running throat testing. But when it happens, remember, these co-infections, particularly Babesia and Bartonella, can suppress the immune system. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll try to nourish the immune system. We'll try to help kind of poke the Bartonella or Babesia to try to do part of the protocol and see if I can retest in 2 or 3 months the tick panel and see if I can see your immune system rising up to fight it. And so the short answer is, if you're kind of borderline and we're wondering, I can usually tell within 2 or 3 months, both positively and negatively, if this is really a problem or if tick-borne illness is not the thing that you need to be chasing to improve your health. So in that rare case, there is ways to decipher, but it takes a little bit of a trial. I cannot stress how important it is to have accurate testing so you know what you're fighting. If you know what you're fighting, then you can make a reasonable plan to get better, and you can also track. So as you're going through, you can say which part got better and which part did I not succeed at. And that way you're able to make adjustments until you find success and health. I'm Dr. Warren. Thanks for listening.